Today's tutorial is going to be how to make a curling iron pocket using flying geese quilt blocks. To make it a little bit easier on us today, we're going to use the tool from Creative Grids called the Ultimate Flying Geese tool. If you don't have this tool, I did create another video that shows you how to make flying geese without the tool that you can also find in the Delafield Quilt Company's video channel. So some supplies that we're going to need to make this curling iron pocket are two different types of fabric. You really don't need much. Probably a fat quarter square of each color would be plenty, and then you have some left over. Coordinating thread, cutting tool, a piece of batting, and a piece of the ironing board fabric. You also need a straight edge ruler. Anyone will do. I'm using the Creative Grids 8.5 inch square. And then also for this tutorial, the Ultimate Flying Geese ruler. Again, if you don't have this, that's okay, because there is another video on how to make them without. Okay, let's get started. What's nice about the Ultimate Flying Geese tool is it takes out the math work that you normally would need to make a flying geese. It tells you, based on what your finished size is, exactly what you need to cut. So for today's tutorial, we're going to use the 3 inch by 6 inch finished size flying geese. If you have a curling iron that's maybe got a bigger barrel on it, go ahead and up the sizes. They give you a couple other sizes on there as well that you can use. But the 3 inch by 6 inch will hopefully work for most curling irons. We need to cut some pieces of fabric. We're going to cut one of the larger squares, which is going to be a 7 inch and 3/4 inch square. And then we're going to cut 4 smaller squares of the other fabric, which is going to be 4 1/4 inch. So I'm going to go ahead and cut those right now. Once you have your 4 smaller squares cut, you then need to draw a line diagonally across each of the squares. I'm going to just go ahead and use a pencil. You're not going to see this line once it's all sewn. Then you're going to take your large square, and with right sides together, you're going to line one up here on the top corner, and then the other one down at the bottom. Make sure that your edges align to the block below. And also make sure the diagonal is going this way. So we're going to pin this quick, and then we're going to sew 1/4 inch on each side. Okay, now that we have our line sewn 1/4 inch from the pencil line, we're going to go ahead and cut right on that pencil line. The next thing we need to do is press these both open. We're going to press the seam towards the smaller triangle. Once your pieces are pressed, you're going to take the last 2 squares and put one on one of your pieces, lining up the edges. Make sure the diagonal is going this way. Use a few pins to secure, and then do the same with the second one. Like we did before, we're going to sew a 1/4 inch seam on either side of the pencil line. Got it sewn 1/4 inch on each side of the pencil line, I'm just going to go ahead and cut right on that pencil line. Okay, so once you've cut these, you end up with 4 different pieces, so we'll end up with 4 flying geese from this. We're going to go ahead and press it again, and we're going to make sure that the seam is going towards the small triangle on each of these. Okay, so now that we have the squares all pressed, we're going to do the final step of creating the flying geese blocks, and that's to trim them to size. The Ultimate Flying Geese tool is really nice for that because it trims them to size and it also leaves the seam allowance. It leaves a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So we're going to find on here the 3x6. It's this white line. It's also lettered F. It's a little hard to see in this picture. But I'm going to line that white line up with the main triangle here of the flying geese. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim all the way around this. And so once you have this top corner trimmed, you're going to turn your square, and then you're going to also turn the ruler, and you're going to use this side here. This is going to trim the other side for you. So again, I'm going to find the 3 inch by 6 inch block. It's a white line on here. And then you'll notice, well, maybe you can't see it, but there is another line here that has a triangle that lines up with the main triangle. And then I'm just going to give it one final trim. And that what you end up with is a 3 by 6 inch plus a 1/4 inch seam allowance flying geese. And then I'm going to repeat that for the other 3. Okay, so just like that, we have 4 flying geese squares. So the next step is we are going to sew these together. We're going to sew 3 of them together, just like this, horizontally, using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, right sides together. Okay, now that you have the 3 flying geese sewn together, we're going to go ahead and press the seams. Doesn't really matter which direction you go, just make sure they're all in the same direction. Okay, now that you have this pressed up, you're going to go ahead and make a quilt sandwich. You're going to use your ironing board fabric. It's going to be the metal looking side down, so the right side down. You need a piece that's approximately 11 inches by 9 inches. And then just cut a slightly smaller piece of batting. Lay that on top. And then to finish the little quilt sandwich, you just take what you just pressed and put it on top as well. To quilt this, I'm just going to follow the lines of the triangle. I'm not going to stitch in the ditch, but I'm going to go along this triangle kind of formation, and I'm going to use the presser foot as my guide for spacing. Now that the piece is all quilted, I can go ahead and trim the sides. So I'm just going to take a straight edge, square up the edges, and just cut off the excess. Right, the next step is to sew that 4th flying geese to the top. And you're going to sew it on 3 of the sides, leaving this bottom open. That's because we are going to flip this inside out. Might want to use a tool to help poke out the corners. And I'm going to trim just a little bit of this away so that this lies a little bit nicer. Now that our edge here is sewn and it's turned inside out, I'm going to just go back and redo some of the top stitching just to make sure that this is down nice, so once you have it together it doesn't come up when you pull your curling iron in and out. So I just re-sewed over 2 of the lines that I had already quilted. And you can see on the back how that just tacks down this other piece so that it doesn't lift up as much. Okay, the last step of this project is to fold it inside out. Give it a good finger press. Clip down the edges. And then we're going to sew a 1/4 inch along the seam here. When sewing near the end, make sure you do some back stitching just to make sure that stitch is nice and secure. So now that I have this sewn, I'm going to go ahead and just trim a little bit more of this excess here. Just probably taking it into about 1/8 inch from the stitch line. This is going to help when you turn it inside out and get rid of some of that extra bulk. Be careful not to trim over the stitch. Now that it's trimmed up, we can go ahead and turn it inside out. I'm just using a pencil eraser to get the corners pushed out as much as I can. And there you have your completed curling iron pocket. Thank you for joining us today at the Delafield Quilt Company. If you liked this video, please like it and consider subscribing. Have a great day.